But from the doctors we've had on, just read the insert. If there's a big meltdown in your area, and we're just getting smaller amounts of fallout, it's still, big for happening all the way in Japan. But if there was larger fallout, and they break down how many rads of certain, types of radiation, then you would take it to fill your thyroid with the good iodine. Separately from that, a good seaweed supplement that fills your thyroid beforehand with the right type of iodine will block the radioactive iodine and other things from being able to fill up your thyroid. But again, I'm not giving medical advice here. Look it up for yourself. I have started supplementing with brown kelp seaweed, and I'm also taking some of the longevity products from InfoWarsTeam.com. And I've not moved my children out of the United States, even though I could go to the Southern Hemisphere, and they would have about half the background radiation level that we have here in this hemisphere because of Chernobyl and now Fukushima and other events. I've decided, I guess, to stay here. But it's a very, very scary trend that more and more of the system is implying that higher levels of radiation is not a big deal. It's kind of like depleted uranium, which they wouldn't let the military use until 1990. They had it back in the 50s, well, really the 40s, but they said in those reports you can't use it because it ignites going down the barrel. You get some of the heavy metal and its toxicity, and it's also radioactive. But by 1990, they said, hell, let's go ahead and use this. The toxic waste left over from nuclear weapons production and other things. So that's a big issue, a big problem that we're facing there, that the system has just decided that radiation is not a problem, that radiation is not a big deal.
This question comes to you from user Adam. He says, hey, Alex, I was wondering if you had any insights into the Port Arthur massacre that happened in Australia back in 1996. I think that it was tragic, but it looks like it was staged by the New World Order to disarm Australia and by introducing uniform gun laws. So I was wondering if you have ever studied this event in your work, or if there's anything you have to say, since there were inconsistencies in the official story.
All of these mass shootings that we've seen, all of them, the person has been under psychiatric care and has been connected to different secret societies. The Masons, they had a similar one that happened in Scotland that they used to basically ban guns across the UK around a similar time. This event killed 35 people. The whole thing was very, very suspicious. The police stood down, and we saw the Columbine shooting with Harris and Kleinbold, and all the weird connections, and the school being half empty, and they got 126 bombs into the building, and the SWAT team admitted they'd shot some people. This was all in the news. And the sheriff and the school administrators were meeting at a Subway sandwich place while this was happening. And there was this huge stand down. The witnesses saw other people. These do have all the hallmarks of a false flag event. Harris and Kleinbold had shot a movie months before that the school sponsored of the Basketball Diaries, where they're shooting everyone in the school. And then what you do is you get people to play along in a drill that now we're going to do a safety drill. You shoot a bunch of people and then have footage of Harris and Kleinbold walking around on the surveillance tapes. So if you look at that, I'd say about a 95% chance that was staged. We know they had prior knowledge. We know people aided them. But 95% chance it was completely staged. Port Arthur, we're not as sure, but it's got the same earmarks. And a lot of these other events do look like psyops. I mean, Gulf of Tonkin was staged. Operation Ajax to overthrow Iran in '53 was staged. So many other events have been staged that this is exactly the type of stuff the anti-gun lobby engages in with criminal elements. Here's a great example of a false flag staged terror attack. It wasn't just the ATF with Fast and Furious 3 years ago letting guns be sold at gun shops to trace them. That was their cover when it started coming out in federal court. It was there day one. We broke at InfoWars.com and PrisonPlanet.com and now PlanetInfoWars.com. What really happened there, because it was in federal courts in January of 2011 that the U.S. government was shipping drugs in through Sinaloa and other cartels and shipping them guns, but also to Honduras, not just Mexico, and to cities inside the U.S. like Tampa, areas, not just in Tampa, but also up in Indiana. So government criminal elements that are controlling the drug trade. And that was done, the memos later came out, CBS News covered it, to blame the Second Amendment. So they ship guns into Mexico, call the Civil War down there and the drug war the fault of America. And even though they got caught, the Attorney General still came out, Eric Holder, who's been caught in perjury, and said, we need to ban semi-autos. We need to restrict how many guns you can buy because of what happened in Mexico. So we know they do false flags. That is a great question. I'm not 100% sure on that particular massacre, what back in 1996.
Mm-hmm. So they just basically do this to take away liberties and force you into being scared to give them up, basically?
Yes, they have these big media events. I mean, they have mass shootings sometimes that are real, but it doesn't get much attention because the government and media weren't basically already primed to make a big issue out of it. I mean, there are some real events.
Right.
You know, sometimes a Palestinian woman goes on a bus with a hidden gun and shoots 10 people or stabs them, you know, things like that. There are occasional real shootings at workplaces. You know, the old thing of going postal. Got a bunch of, you know, vets. Some of them have got post-traumatic stress disorder. They've killed people before. They've crossed that threshold. Their boss keeps, you know, doing stuff to them. They go crazy. Instead of committing suicide, they go to work and shoot 10 people. Those are real. They don't get any attention. We protested Bilderberg in Fairfax County. I was reminded of a report where 6 cops got shot when a teenager went in and killed them. Because that was real, and because it showed the state isn't really powerful, almost no coverage. So the telltale sign is they're in psychiatric care. There's more shooters than were originally thought. Mm. The people thought they were taking part in a drill, doing a movie shoot, which we know was on record they were doing, as a cover. 7/7, the London bombings came out, was a government event. I mean, that's even mainstream news that a SWAT, the MI6 agent, was leading the group. They thought it was a drill of taking backpack bombs on the trains and buses. And then later it came out the exact same bus and trains, there was a drill of them being attacked at the exact same time, exact same location. So see, it's always those key earmarks.
Yeah.
Great questions. In fact, we were talking before we taped this that this is in the section at planetinfowars.com, the Ask Alex.
Ask Alex group. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And again, folks, there's a few bugs with the site. That's why it's in beta. It's getting very, very popular, but we're working with database folks, so thank you for being part of it. And I'm now ranting. We're only into question number 2. Christy, continue here.
All right, so the next question comes to you from Glenn, and he says, Alex, I've been curious, what ever happened to TV Westerns? You know, the cowboys come on with their guns, they fight the bad guys. I don't see that anymore. Is that just a trend, or was this a psych op, or was this some sort of pressure to take these off to kind of, you know, take away the little boy heroes of the cowboys, and now all we see are the police, like a lot of cop dramas. So is that to familiarize us with a police state, or like the idea of being comfortable?
Again, this this question is excellent. There's actually been books written, and Hollywood's actually admitted, especially under J. Edgar Hoover, but it got worse after that, but he started it. Everything was basically government approved that had the FBI or any federal police involved in it. And, of course, a new movie came out that was directed by Clint Eastwood, you know, breaking that down about J. Edgar Hoover. It's very accurate from my research. And it's expanded since then, where you can get free tanks, free helicopters, aircraft carriers, you know, tens of millions of dollars of value of production, you know, perks. I'm trying to think of the exact Hollywood word they use, but the point is that you can get half your budget if you put certain messages in your film. The Pentagon will pay for it. The Pentagon will let you use their equipment. They will give you advisors, but they've got to approve the script. Well, it's expanded into what I call propaganda placement. The media now admits it is going on and calls it behavior placement. And so when you see a billboard for join the military in a movie, or when you're watching basketball or football and they make a basket or a touchdown and it always cuts the military in the audience, that's to create a Pavlovian response where you ring a bell.
Right, and then drooling.
and then feed the dog the steak.
Right.
Exactly. Well, wow, you're excited there's a basket cut to the troops. So everything is oh, troops are good. And again, it's not that the troops are even bad, it's that the troops are used to sell the global agenda. And Westerns were something that was in the American psyche from the 1860s and 70s on, because there were bigger wars with the Indians and everything in the Midwest and the East that made wars out West look tame. I mean, there were fights with 100,000 Indians against, 30,000 troops, things that went on over 5 state areas, whole towns massacred on both sides. I mean, there was stuff that's never been in movies. It's only in books because that was never popularized in newspaper serials in, the 1790s, the 1820s, 30s, 40s, 50s. The West was really won by Western expansion in the East and the Plains areas and the Midwest by the 1850s. But then it was popularized in culture of the out West battle and the romanticism of that. When they were, I mean, believe me, and I'm not saying the Apaches weren't tough, but it was nothing compared to some of the giant wars that happened in the Midwest. I mean, just huge wars where tens of thousands were killed every few months. But now I'm digressing off into history to answer the question. The reason Westerns were so big in the psyche is it was the, Western bravado, a militarized country, the tough guys out there on their own against the elements. That was mainly because it was popular. And John Ford and others knew that's what was selling. And so it wasn't really propaganda, the Westerns. You're right, though. They didn't like that rugged individualistic attitude. They liked the militarized attitude. So they segued towards the heroes only being the police. And they're the only heroes in America. And it creates, almost like a mental illness now where we think America is only the troops and only the police, which is really something right out of fascist societies like Nazi Germany. Not saying the military themselves or the police are bad, but that in a sick society going into a fascist or authoritarian model, for that matter, you start seeing nothing but police and flags and checkpoints and black mask and, well, now drones in the sky. And, oh, hey, we are spying on you. This is turning into a whole show of its own.
Given the fact that they're taking away the individual, ruggedness kind of idea. The cowboy was, out to uphold his own rights, and now it's only if you follow orders and you're part of a crew of police or military, then that's...
There you go.
Is that ultimately the sum up of it? The idea that the individual is no longer got his own rights. And
Christy, I think you said it all in 10 seconds when I took 20 minutes.
We're going to start cutting Alex's rants to just Christy.
I think that's a better idea. This was your idea about Ask Alex. We'll just have Christy.
All right, Alex, we've got to make this quick. You've got other things you have to do, so let's keep it short.
All right.
All right. Robert Victor asks you, does anyone know where the money from the IMF Global and the money from the Morgan Chase has gone? Or has it just disappeared and ended up in somebody's pocket?
Well, the